Our vision in the Borough of Kensington, Chelsea and Westminster is based on the rights of people to live a life free from harm, where communities have a culture that does not tolerate abuse. They work together to prevent abuse and know what to do if and when abuse happens. Elder abuse can take many forms.
Yeah? Alex? Alex, son, do you want a biscuit? Son. I'm so worried about my son. He has schizophrenia. He rarely smiles. Can't make eye contact anymore. He's lost in his own mind. I bought him a cup of tea earlier today and he accused me of trying to poison him. He often lashes out at me aggressively in fear. He's my son. And I don't want him to go into an institution. It's becoming so difficult to care for him. Son, I'll find you a cup of tea.
Wow. So Hugh, what are the safeguarding issues that film is showing us?
Well, safeguarding is essentially about the protection of adults with care and support needs from abuse and neglect. I think what's interesting in this film is that here the person with care and support needs is not the person being abused, but is actually the person who's kind of causing harm. The person with care and support needs here is Alex with his schizophrenia, but it's actually him that is harming the father. And what that highlights, I think, is that harm is not necessarily any less harmful just because the person doing it is doing it as a result of their condition. You know, the harm doesn't have to be from a place of malice or anything like that. And I suppose that also reminds us that it's important how we use language, because we sometimes talk about abusers, and it's really unhelpful to stigmatise Alex with labels like that. And also, I suppose, in safeguarding terms, we have duties to people with care and support needs, but here we have a father who doesn't have any particular vulnerabilities himself, other than in his role as carer to Alex. It's important that we remember that we do still have duties towards carers, such as the father. We have a duty to promote their well-being, and that includes their right to live a life free from abuse and neglect.
You really, in a sense, have to be caring for both of them.
Yeah, no. I mean, we would always want to look at challenges that the family as a whole are facing here and try and do as much kind of early intervention and prevention work. I mean, the father expresses his anxiety about Alex going into an institution, but there's all sorts of early intervention work we could do around giving the father a carer's assessment of his own and giving him support as a carer, providing extra support to Alex that doesn't involve institutions. So there's a lot we could do for the families.
The father was quite adamant that he didn't want his son to go into an institution. So are you able to support him?
There are home treatment teams that could come in and support Alex. There's short-term respite for either Alex or his father. So plenty of options.
What is the matter? All of a sudden you look so tired and...
I am. I've been under a strain. I've got to get away.
What do you mean away?
Well, I need rest. My nerves are... I'm going to move.
Again? You said that at luncheon. Yeah, what kind of a place do you live in?
That's it. That's what's the matter with me.
Like you even talked about, we couldn't even stay in the same room together.
Well,
That's what you even said. Otherwise, we would fight, right?
We would have fought as soon as you walked in the house.
You would have fought.
I would have, 100%, for sure.
But I was the one kicked out of the house.
Because you didn't pay the money.
Why couldn't you It's so hard still living with her after all this time. But me and the kids just have no other option. Sure, this is her house, but it's too big for her to navigate anyway. I am sorry about the situation, but I'm doing everything. I'm paying for everything. I'm organising her carer. It's just so difficult. And I'm under so much pressure at work. Me and the kids haven't had a holiday for ages, and all she does is complain and complain. So yeah, sometimes it gets to me, and I lash out. And then I feel bad afterwards. She really needs to go to a nursing home. It would work better for us all if she just moved out.
This is a scenario that so many families must now be experiencing.
Yeah, we see it more and more, I think, particularly working in central London where property prices are so high. You do get intergenerational families moving back in together, perhaps when they didn't always expect to. And yeah, that can lead to some of the sort of tensions that we see here. That the granddaughter here we see is struggling with her own work and with the lack of the break. And yeah, we can understand the challenges that she as a carer for her grandmother is facing. But it's important to recognise this for what it is. This is sort of domestic abuse. It's not the stereotype that we have of domestic abuse between kind of, current or former intimate partners, but this is, this sort of familial abuse we do see quite often, and we need to kind of recognise it for what it is. The grandmother at the heart of this story, who not only is she being hit, you see her being marginalised in her own home and ignored. She is the person that we have the duty to protect, and we need to recognise that there's also hints of possible financial abuse because the granddaughter clearly wants to have the house to herself, perhaps. So we would want to work again with the whole family, not least because there are clearly young children involved. So we'd want to take a kind of think family, preventative approach to try and kind of understand the pressures, because the granddaughter is clearly facing pressures at work, hasn't had a break. But so again, we'd want to work with her and not demonise her again, as we saw in the first film, not demonise her as an abuser. This is a woman that's struggling with children, their grandmother, and all the pressures of daily life. So we would to provide as much support to the whole family, because safeguarding is about support, primarily to the person at risk themselves, but to the whole family if that's what it needs. And it is about that support rather than kind of being a sort of punitive process towards the person that's causing harm. Even where you have here, this clearly is abuse. The granddaughter admits that she does hit her grandmother. We absolutely need to protect the grandmother here. But yeah, if we can do it in a way that kind of respects those family ties and can provide support to everyone involved.
That's quite a lot of pressure on the care worker in that scenario, isn't it? Who her priorities should be with.
We'd want her to kind of let us know if that they can be eyes and ears on the whole situation to see whether it's improving or potentially whether the situation's getting worse and we might need to sort of take stronger action.
Would you also take advice from maybe neighbours if they're hearing things? Would you be able to follow that up?
Absolutely. I mean, we would want to hear from anyone if they had concerns about abuse. I mean, it's a cliche, it's a slogan, but safeguarding is everybody's business, and we'd be very keen to hear from people if they, I know people would be anxious about interfering and so on, but yeah, no, we'd be very keen to hear from anyone if they had any concerns, yeah.
What I'm doing is helping him with his finance. If I don't do it, who knows what he will spend his money on? And it's only fair that I take a little for me and my kids.
I don't want her getting into trouble, but it is my money. I've managed perfectly well on my own for years.
That's very different, and I imagine you have to take a completely different approach.
Yeah, so I mean, there are some similarities here, I suppose. Again, we've got an older person being marginalised and not having their choices respected. But in this situation, we have a neighbour clearly financially abusing the person. She acknowledges that she takes a bit of money for herself and her children. I mean, what's interesting here is that the neighbour is probably genuinely helpful, helping her neighbour manage his finances. Also, at the same time, in that sort of just taking a bit for her and her children, she is financially abusing him. Again, we need to get away from the notion that abusers are evil baddies on this side. It's always more complicated than that. And quite often, as I say, yeah, the person who is at risk that doesn't want the person to get into trouble, and we need to respect that on the whole. Well, one of the kind of key principles to safeguarding under the law is proportionality, that we don't go in all guns blazing if the situation doesn't warrant it. And we might here even respect his wishes not to do anything with this. Here we've got a guy who may not have much by way of social contact, and it might be more important to him that his neighbour comes round, helps him with his money, maybe stops for a cup of tea and a chat. That might be more important to him than the fact that she takes some of his money for doing so. We'd be guided by him on that.
It must be a minefield from a safeguarding point of view. And how do you approach that?
He clearly knows that he's being abused here. I think ideally what we try and do is maintain the relationship. If he does enjoy having his neighbour come around, maintain that relationship, but maybe provide him with some support, some other way of helping him manage his money so that he's not losing any to the neighbour. And as much as possible, trying to keep him in control of his money. I mean, as he says, he's been doing this for years, that there's indications here that he's not as young as he was and maybe he needs some support with it. But as much as possible, we always try and keep people in control of their own lives for as long as we can, to the greatest extent that we can.
Do banks, I mean, do they help in any way?
The banks can be really helpful, actually. The banks are very good at getting in touch with us if they spot very unusual transactions. So they're great allies in safeguarding. Situations where financial abuse can be quite significant, banks are very good at helping us to change bank accounts, to lock down, change PIN numbers, those sorts of things, yeah.
Now, we've been able to see the lives of people through the films, but it's not always that simple, is it? It's not always that black and white for you. No,
absolutely. I mean, this sort of domestic familial abuse or abuse between neighbours is very often hidden. It can be very often hard to pick up. And what's required of us, I think, as professionals is to have that degree of professional curiosity to kind of see what's happening behind some of these situations and to really see the person at the centre of them.
Well, Hugh, this has been fascinating and eye-opening for me, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you're experiencing elder abuse, there are a number of things you can do. You're not alone. Many individuals have faced similar situations and found the strength to overcome them. There is support available, so if you find yourself or someone you know experiencing elder abuse, talk to someone you trust. Share your concerns with a friend, family member, or healthcare professional. Tell them as soon as possible. Tell them what has happened to make you unhappy. Ask them to write down what you have said and ask them for a copy that you can keep. You can always report any abuse to your care provider or social worker. You can also report abuse to us by email or phone. For Kensington and Chelsea, telephone 020 7361 3013. Or you can email socialservices@rbkc.gov.uk. For Westminster, the telephone number is 020 7641 2176 and email is adultsocialcare@westminster.gov.uk. If the abuse is a crime, such as assault, racial abuse or rape, you should tell the police. If you're worried about talking to the police, you can talk to someone from Adult Social Care first. Victim support helps anyone affected by crime. Get in touch anytime for independent, free and confidential advice. Call Support Line on 08 08 16 89 111 or text Relay. Use the Relay UK app or contact us at BSL. Start a live chat. In an emergency, you should always call 999. You can talk to victim support whether or not you have reported the crime to the police. They can support you without the involvement of a criminal justice system. They are available just to support you.